Well, there you are, see? But I can't get it.
Okay, so we're in the bottom screen instead of the top screen. So how do you flip that? What does this button up at the end here do?
That brings up this. We have 37 people watching, but I can't get rid of that. And I don't know whether there's any sound either. Well, Hazel's there keeping people company.
One of these ones over here do.
Nothing. I can't get rid of this top screen. I don't know why. We have Hazel here. We've got the same problem we had last week. We're just trying to figure it out. Let us know if you can hear us. Yeah, they can hear us. Sorry, guys. I know you can see Hazel there. She's our placeholder for now. We'll just keep Hazel. There's Hazel. Everybody can see Hazel for a minute. Yes.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, Hazel.
All right.
Come on down, bud.
Second here. There we go.
All right. Problem solved.
Yes.
And everyone can hear me, right?
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. Well, they haven't quite caught up to us, but that's okay. There we go. I gotta. All right. You can go. They can't hear.
Hi, I'm Paul J. Bennett, Canadian fantasy author, and this is my live stream. Well, I say live, but I think there's about a 5-second delay before you actually see what I'm doing, so I'm in the future. This week, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some role-playing games that I've played over the years, and I have some books here that I'm going to show you to give you some idea just how far back my gaming history goes. I also played war games, board games, that kind of thing. But this one, we're going to concentrate on role-playing games. And as most of you are probably aware, that's what eventually led me to writing. So thought that would be a good place to start. And in between talking about all this stuff, we'll take some questions as well. So I started gaming a long time ago. The original, I think it was called Basic D&D, came out. It was a box set. It was supposed to include dice, but it didn't. So I had to make little counters represent four-sided dice and so on. And that's really what got me started in terms of role playing. I played war games, like Risk or whatever prior to that. But that kind of opened up a new world of possibilities. So the original D&D was actually based on this book here, which is Chainmail. This is the original edition of Chainmail. Well, actually it says third edition. Okay, $5 this cost way back in the day. And of course, in those days, you couldn't order things on the internet. So you had to either luck into finding it at a store or mail away for it. This one I found in I think I got this at a con, actually, a convention.
You used to
way
go to
back
a
in the
lot of
early days.
conventions, didn't you?
I did, primarily in Windsor and Michigan. London is relatively close to those. Ann Arbor, Michigan, actually, is where we used to go to Michicon. Went there quite a few times. And let me just say, going to the dealer's room was the highlight for me. Just to see all the vendors there with all their figures and rule sets and everything was just amazing, because up to then, all you got to see was advertisements in magazines like Dragon Magazine and so on. So yeah, this eventually became D&D. Now, when I started on D&D, they were all small books like this one. I couldn't find my other books. I actually used to have all the rules in this format. And let me tell you, it was a very, very different game back then. This size of book, by the way, was very common in the early days of gaming. I've got another book here. Another popular game of the time period is Traveller. Now, Traveller was put out by Games Design Workshop. I think I got that right, GDW. And it was a science fiction role-playing game. It's still in production now. I think someone else has the rights to it now. And it comes in a different format. But you can see how these are essentially the same size. So they're very different in terms of the mechanics. D&D has always used 3 6-sided dice for your attributes, statistics, whatever you want to call them. Traveller uses 2 dice. So yeah, they range from 2 to 12, and then there's modifiers that can push things up as high as 15. So yeah, these are like the really early days of role playing. And there were some others back then, but I only bring these up because these are the ones that I played most often. So there were other games back then, Chaosium and so on, Tunnels and Trolls, but I never really played those, so I can't really comment on them. The one I probably spent the most time with is AD&D. This is actually a newer copy because my original copy, which I still have somewhere, is so worn that I had to put a new binder on it. I had to hole punch it and so on. It literally was falling apart. I think Carol's looking for it now. But that's what it looked like when it was fresh out of the box. And to give you some idea of how used these books were, here is the Dungeon Master's Guide for AD&D. And you'll notice I've got, now you might think that's duct tape, but I'm going to tell you it's not. It's gun tape, which is what we in the Canadian Forces called it. It's green instead of silver. It's essentially the same thing, but in a military color. So there you have it. There's a Dungeon Master's Guide for Advanced D&D. This is even before we started calling it 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th edition, and so on. These pages are well worn, let me tell you. Even the back, a lot of the text is worn right off. So we got a lot of use out of that particular set. Now, we also played lots of other games, and I brought a collection of some of our favorite games. This is one that we really enjoyed. Daredevils. This is uses it's not really a D20 system. I guess you use a D20 for combat and stuff. This is Daredevils. This is kind of like Indiana Jones, or I guess you could do anything basically set in the 20s or 30s. Or even earlier if you wanted to, I suppose. It was a fun game. We did quite a few campaigns. I both ran campaigns based on this and also played in some. It was a lot of fun. Relatively simple system. Another one from the same company is Flashing Blades, which we played a lot of as well. Flashing Blades is a similar system to this, but it is the Three Musketeers, basically. So that was a lot of fun. Carol used to run that, actually. So that was fun to play. And I think one of the more used games that we played was the Star Trek role-playing game by FASA. So this is Once again, my books are in pretty poor shape, so I just grabbed some samples. This is the game operations manual. So this is I think the second edition, where they cleaned up the rules a little bit. This particular book is more about background to the game. The other book that came with it was how to generate your character, and it uses a skill-based system and percentage values for your skills. And then you'll notice I've got these other books here. There was a Romulan and a Klingon supplement. This is the first edition of the Romulan add-on. There was 2 books there as well, so you could actually play a Romulan character. And then this is one of the 2 Klingon books. And Klingons, we had a lot of fun with this. The interesting thing about the Klingons of the FASA universe, they were based on a book called The Final Reflection by John M. Ford. And this is long before The Next Generation came out. So he developed a background for the Klingon race. He explained why the Klingons in the movies look different from the TV show. He had a whole system of how their government worked and all this other stuff. And so it's very interesting to delve into. Very, very different from what we ended up with going into The Next Generation.
Dave says he always wanted to try Renegade Legion. He believes that was FASA also. And
yes,
his first edition is just as beat up as well, but I can't find yours.
Yeah. Yeah, Renegade Legion, I remember seeing that. But at the time, I was not in a financial position to buy every game that I could see, so I had to pick and choose, which is always a problem for most of us, at least back then. You know, these books were relatively cheap by today's standards, but back in the day when I started as a teenager, it was tough just to get that amount of money, because you would pay all that money to go to a convention, you'd have to pay for a hotel room. You don't have a lot of room left over after eating to buy rule books. And to be quite honestly, I think I bought more miniatures than I would rule books for the games that I had. Now, when I was in the military, when I was in base Borden before I got married, the guys in the barracks, we used to play Middle Earth role playing. This is by ICE, Iron Crown Enterprises. This is a fun one. Probably the best part of this is the critical hit table that explains in great detail how someone dies when their hit points get to a certain point. This is actually a shortened version of what they call, now what did they call it? They had Arms Law. I want to say it was the law system, but there was a whole bunch of books. So there was a book on magic, a book on weapons, and so on. Can't recall the name of the entire set, but this is a cleaned up version. And this is interesting too, because it takes place in Middle Earth. You could set it at different times. What's interesting, I only got the 1 book, but they had supplements that covered off other parts of the world not seen in the books. Of course, this is long before the movies came out. So they had maps of, I think, Far Harad, which is where the Herod Waith come from, and so on, if you're familiar with Tolkien. If not, well, don't worry about it. I have another rule book here that has seen a lot of use, and this is, look at this, it's falling apart. This is Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game. This is, I think, 3rd or 4th edition, I can't remember. But it was a lot of fun. So this game uses percentile dice for some things and then D6s for other things. And you basically have careers that you progress through. So you might start as a rat catcher or a road warden or whatever. There's lots of different ones to choose from. And then you buy your advancements within that class or that profession, and then when you fulfill all the advancements using experience points to buy up all those bonuses, then you move on to another career, and then you start buying the advancements in that career. So it's a very different way of looking at things. The only problem we had with this particular rule system is what came to be known as the naked dwarf syndrome. So in the game, you have a score called toughness, Toughness reduces the damage you take, but it combines with armor, and dwarves get a bonus to the toughness. And if you take the right career choices, you become almost impossible to hit. At least that's certainly what seemed to be the case. So yeah, a lot of fond memories of playing Warhammer Fantasy role playing. Also, it's a very sort of dark world. So yeah, I guess if you're into, what's the term I'm looking for? Dark fantasy. Grimdark. There you go, Grimdark. This would be kind of one of those games that you might like to try. And I had the supplements for this, Shadows over Bogenhofen, and
Good game.
And yeah, and it was a lot of fun. Some of the adventures were a little linear, but that was okay. There was so much detail, you could let characters kind of wander around and then eventually bring them back to the storyline. So a lot of fun memories of that. That was great fun. Moving on to, everyone should recognize the name of this particular product. So this is actually the newer edition. I have the older book, which is a bit thinner. This is just a revamped version. It's a little bit thicker. It's got some really nice pictures in it, and of the equipment and things like that. It was expanded and revised. So this is uses a D6 system, and a very, very fun game. We played many a campaign using this rule set. So that was a lot of fun. And to be quite honest, just the supplements for this, the stuff they added in terms of ships, and you want detailed drawings. And you got to remember too, this is before the internet got really big. Nowadays, of course, you can look up and you can see people modeling in 3D Star Wars spaceships, well, even Star Trek spaceships. But back in the day, you didn't have that kind of resource. So it was great to have books like this that not only told you how to run the game, but also give you physical examples or pictures of you know, X-Wings, Y-Wings, whatever it is that you want to be able to play. Using these rules, you could play pretty much anything, bounty hunters, Jedi. I think they even had rules for use the dark side of the Force, if I recall. Been a while since we've run Star Wars, so I don't know how well it would adapt to the newer movies. I guess you just have to come up with some statistics for the newer ships. There is actually Star Trek and Star Wars have modern versions of the role-playing games from different companies. This one was West End Games, which was out of England. Now, when let's see, I'm not sure what the exact year would be, but some time ago, sometime after I had been running Star Trek, I really wanted to, I really liked reading the Sharp books by Bernard Cornwell, and I thought it would be very interesting to play a game, a historical role-playing game, where you're a soldier in the army of the Duke of Wellington in Spain in the Peninsula War. And I kind of got the idea originally from a skirmish game that was published in, I think it was in Dragon Magazine or White Dwarf, one or the other, I can't remember which. It was just a skirmish game. I thought, well, what if I, you know, took something, made a bunch of, like, make it skill-based. I really enjoyed the skill-based concept from the Star Trek series. And so I thought I will come up with a game. And this is what evolved. This is actually the original version of the rules. I called it Peninsula War, Role-Playing in the Age of Napoleon. I've always been interested in the Peninsula War campaign in particular, but there's no reason why, if you're into history, you couldn't portray any other part of the war. And I think what really helped was, of course, the BBC made the show, I think it was BBC, made the Sharp series with Sean Bean playing Sharp. And if you watch those TV shows, they're actually more like movies. They're episodic, but they're movies. You get a really good idea of what you kind of stuff you can do. And, you know, half the fun of this is playing on stereotypes with the the officers of the regiment and so on. So this is actually very, very thin. I'll show you what this is an original character sheet. I just grabbed some art that I found, and back then we had to, I think I scanned it in.
Go a little closer and...
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So that's what a character sheet looked like. This game changed a lot. This is a...
That's my character.
That is your character, Peter Edward Stanhope, the Viscount of Blackburn.
That was my first character. Then I actually went with Gravenhurst.
Yes. Yeah, I ran, I want to say 3 different campaigns of Peninsula over the years, like really long ones. I first ran it in Cold Lake, Alberta, with friends of ours, and they ended up, we moved it from the peninsula to Canada for the War of 1812.
We did.
And that was quite exciting.
And one of our characters died.
And one, yes.
Beardsley.
Sergeant
Jim
Beardsley. Jim and Glenna, yeah. Shout out to Glenna there. She died, so they the other players erected a statue in her honor in the game, obviously. So that was a lot of fun. And like I said, this is just the original version of the rules. I have a whole binder of rules now where I've manipulated it. Now, this game here, in its final form, led to what I run now on a regular basis and have been running for quite a few years. And it's a game that I call Fantasy Wars. And it's called that because this was Peninsular War. So I thought Fantasy War, but I made it plural because, you know, more than one war. And I took the basic rule sets for this. One of our players said, well, what if you put some magic in there and then we could make it fantasy? So we did. And that brings us to Fantasy Wars, which is the game system that I use now and that I run almost every Saturday night. So it's a lot of fun. It's a skill-based system. There are no classes per se. You decide on the skills that you want. Now, to go with that, give me a moment here. Oh. Oof. I have some binders here.
I thought I'd show them your struggle. It's real.
So this is well, that's actually, okay, we'll start with the oldest one first. So this is, it might sound familiar, Heir to the Crown. This was the campaign book. So this is basically the beginning of the world of Idenworth. It wasn't called Idenworth back then. But basically this is what it started life as. Now I have 2 other binders that represent the 6 seasons that I ran my game in. I like to divide my game up into seasons of 6. I shouldn't say 6, sorry. It's 12 gaming, I shouldn't say gaming sessions either, really. 12 adventures. An adventure is hopefully 1 gaming night, but sometimes it takes more than 1 night to finish a particular storyline. So there's a big campaign, and after 12 episodes, that's 1 season, and then we change it up and you progress on to a larger story. So it went 6 seasons, and this makes up essentially the first 5 books of Heir to the Crown series. Now I had another one here. Let's see. This is The Last King. Unfortunately, this one got cut short because I just grabbed some art off the internet just so I have something on the cover. So what happened in this game is players start in a village on the sort of outskirts of one of the petty kingdoms. Unbeknownst to almost everyone, one of them is secretly an heir to the throne. He's been smuggled out years ago, raised as a commoner. Only one player knows, and that's the captain of the local militia. He's there to protect the guy. And unfortunately, our friend Jeff Parker, who was playing the lead, if you like, in the storyline, passed away, and we were unable to complete the campaign. So this is sort of dedicated to him. Now, the last campaign, I don't know if you follow my newsletter, but I recently wrapped up a campaign, and this one was Gobsmacked. And this is actually Carol's character, Tarzal, a goblin wolf rider. And yes, Tarzal, I did use that name when I wrote The Spark of Change because the character was so fun. And Carol didn't mind. She was immortalized on the page.
I mean, your first series is all about my character.
Yes, that's true. Anna
So-
was based on your character.
It was, in fact.
So yeah, and now we've started a brand new campaign. And this one takes place in the Duchy of Holstead, which features prominently in the book Ashes. All right, let me grab a sip of something to drink here.
How is this restarting?
So a lot of my experience running games was the same kind of experience I used creating characters and ideas and concepts that I later used in my books. And I can still remember way back in my original D&D campaign, the very first time I created a world, I went to a gaming store and I picked up a blank hex sheet, like a big fold up sheet about, I think it was about like poster size basically, with I think it was 1-inch hexes or 3/4 inches. And I drew in this entire world. And I still remember some of the things I had. Jalthar was the name of a kingdom in the middle. I had an orc kingdom that was more or less friendly orcs. They were orcs with the black axe. Gee, that sounds familiar. I might have used that somewhere. And the leader of those orcs was Karak. And I used that name in the books as well. In fact, the character of Gellion, who is a dwarf in Stonecastle, a dwarf captain, actually, a relative of Herdwin and Steelarm. He was a character way back in my original campaign. So there's a lot of history there.
So I have a few questions.
Sure.
Antoine wants to know what made you want to bring your books and whatnot to YouTube and the Shorts platform.
What made me want...
Why are you on YouTube talking about your books?
Oh, well, it's not just YouTube, it's all the social media. When you're a self-published author, you pretty much have to do all your own marketing. And of course, you can pay for marketing, advertising in various platforms, but also it helps to reach out to people through social media and make them aware of what your books are about and what you as an author are like, so that people can see if that's the kind of thing that they would like to read.
You also like to help other authors and help other people by telling your story, because your story is not the typical author story. And there are people out there who need to see somebody successful and to be inspired. So a lot of it's to inspire other writers, because you didn't really have anybody to inspire you when you first started.
Yeah, that's true. It's when I started writing, I didn't know any other writers. I looked online and got some writing advice from people, but I really hadn't met any. And I read, let's see, was it after the first or second book we met Carolyn, I think? It was after the first book was done, or second book was done.
No, first.
It was just the first. I hadn't quite finished the second book, Sword of the Crown, yet. We went to a book, I should say, it was called Word Fest in London. It still runs on a regular basis. They're an organization. We went because there was a seminar there about writing, and one of the guest speakers was Carolyn Arnold, who's a good friend of ours now. That's where we met. And she writes police procedurals and some other various types of books as well. So it was great. And she'd been writing already for a while as an indie author. So that made a huge difference in terms of how we approached it. And now that I'm more established, I've now met lots of other writers. And it's great being able to help them with advice or just let them know their experience. I don't like to tell people how to write because everyone has to find their own way to write. But it's worth knowing that yes, there are lots of people out there, um, and it's just it's inspiring, I think, to hear how other people are doing. Um, so yeah, from that point of view, that's one of the reasons we're here.
The Art of Trucking just wants to let you know they've read all of your books and they love them. Thank you for creating a wonderful world. Andrew wants to know where he could get your books.
So you can get our books through, if you want ebooks, you can get them directly from our website. You can also get them off of all the major platforms, whether it be Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Barnes and Noble,
And a host
Google
more.
Books, a host of others. You can even technically, you can go into a bookstore. You won't see my books on the shelf, but you should be able to order my books or have them order my books because they are available to bookstores as well.
We have someone asking, Necromonican wants to know, sorry, Ron, Necromonic answered it for somebody, but Happy Bunny Quail wants to know, they want to get into D&D. What book would you recommend they get first to understand the rules?
Whoa, that's a good one. So D&D nowadays is 5th edition. I would highly recommend you get the 5th edition Player's Handbook. The problem you're going to have is there are two versions out right now. There's the 2014 version, which you can't really get unless you get a used copy, and the 2024 version. And I say problem only because if you're joining a group of D&D players, you have to know which system they're using because there are differences in the way characters are generated. They're the same basic system. The understanding of the rules is essentially the same, but the mechanics of creating your characters vary a little bit depending on which version of the rules you're using. It's a fun game. We are involved in a game ourselves actually on Wednesday nights where we're players. So it's really more about it's really about the players and the game master, or the DM, as we call it in D&D. Not so much about the rules itself. It's about taking on a role, playing through the adventure. That's the fun part of role playing. Almost any role playing game can work with the right players.
So Louis wants to know, have you ever had any trouble with your style of writing, or did you study first to become a writer?
I did not study to become a writer.
You went to the
I
school of
read
D&D.
the School of D&D. My writing background comes from years of writing campaigns and adventures for players. I read a lot, particularly, I actually read a lot of science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction. My world is very historically based. It's more of a medieval flavor because that's the period of history, one of the periods of history that I'm very interested in. Um, one of the, I think someone asked me, why don't I write historical fiction? And the answer is history has already been written. In a fantasy world, you write the history as the game master or the author. So I like the freedom of being able to take the story whatever direction I want to take it in. Other than that, I think there was a lot of trial and error. When I started writing, I was fearful that I wouldn't be able to do dialogue. That was my one thing that I constantly worried about. In the end, it just comes naturally. As long as I understand the characters, um, the dialogue just seems to flow nicely. And we've had a couple times during editing where Carol will say, "This character wouldn't say this," and I read it and I go, "Yeah, you're right. I have to
So
change that."
why don't you tell how you transitioned from the role-playing game take a drink, you've been playing for a while. What inspired you to take your role-playing game and write a book? That book.
Servant of the Crown. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember, like, I didn't just wake up one morning and go, "Oh, I'm going to write a book." But I think the idea had percolated for a while, and I had already decided when I ran the Art of the Crown campaign, I already knew where the story was going to go. And I hadn't really done that a lot in a role-playing game before. Now, in a role-playing game, you set the scene, if you like, but it's up to the individual players to decide what's going to happen. But the beauty of a book is you get to decide how the characters react, and you can mold those characters in a way that you might not be able to in a role-playing game. Most of the characters in the Heir to the Crown series, with the exception of four, one that came later, were actually non-player characters that I ran. And just the character of Gerald. Gerald is the main focus of the story in Servant of the Crown. Beverly is in the Sword of the Crown, is the main character. And these were important NPCs from a story perspective. And I just felt like there was more to say about these characters that wouldn't necessarily come out in a role-playing game.
Okay, Rover wants to know, is it better to build the world fully, like make a base and work on it as you go through the story? That's a tough one because you spent how many years building your fantasy world before you wrote about it?
Yeah, so my fantasy world is actually a combination of a number of different campaigns. I had one years ago based on, I had an idea where players are in a kingdom with a missing, I think I called him a graph, actually. He's like a baron, and he's missing. And the Graf's brother is basically running the place, and he's having a party, and the players are hired to find this jewel thief who's been stealing jewels from nobles. And it turns out the jewel thief is actually the daughter of the Graf. She's trying to raise money to pay a ransom to get her father back. That evolved into an entire campaign where her father was restored to power, and then went from being like a baron to an actual king, and all kinds of political shenanigans and everything developed as a result. So part of that was kind of the inspiration for the Petty Kingdoms. The next campaign I played after that was, I think, 3 generations later. And it introduced some newer concepts, including the first use of the idea of temple knights. So that's where temple knights came from. And the character of Charlene, who's featured in the temple
Nobody
books.
can see any
you
of
can't
that.
see any.
Just
Never mind.
you.
Just me.
Just go back.
Yep.
Now you can show
So
them.
there's all these temple books: Temple Knight, Temple Captain, Temple Commander, Temple General. Features a character named Charlene de Chandria. That character was originally named Margaret. I had to change the name because I'd used Margaret in Servant of the Crown as the sister of the princess.
How long did it take us to come up with the name Charlene?
It took a while, and actually Carol came up with Charlene, and I loved it because it sounds like Charlemagne, which is just the kind of right do-gooder kind of a powerful name, I think.
Okay. Necromonicon. My apologies if I said that wrong.
Necronomicon.
Necronomicon.
Like the Book of the Dead or something.
No, it's an MON. So it's yes.
Okay.
They want to write a book that it started as a campaign. When do things become derivative? For example, spells being 1 to 9 level that are holdovers from D&D that I'm keeping because I'm still using World for D&D.
So there's a difference between, that's a tough one to answer. Because I was using my own game system, I have my own magic system that was completely different than D&D. Now, when you look at magic in fiction, there's hard magic and there's soft magic. Hard magic has rules. Mine have rules. Magic is not that powerful. On an individual level, it's powerful. You know, a mage could kill an individual fairly easily if he's powerful enough. But an army is an entirely different matter. D&D, on the other hand, once you get to very high levels, you could launch a fireball that would wipe out dozens of people in one go. So it's a very different rule system. But both of those are hard magic systems. They have rules. There's also soft magic. Now, if you look at something like Lord of the Rings. Does Gandalf even use magic? There's no evidence that he uses magic directly. He faces down a Balrog, which he steals to get all the experience points. But yeah, it's not like he casts a particular spell and you know the effects of that spell. You could make the argument that there's magic going on behind the scenes, which is fine, but it's a different style of writing. And there's nothing wrong with either system. I prefer a hard magic system where the emphasis is on what the characters do, not the spells that they create or use. Because from a fiction perspective, you can write yourself into a corner where a big spell can save the day. And I think to a certain extent, that's not where I want to go. If you want to write that way, you can. The problem, of course, if you're fictionalizing something like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, you have to be careful because of copyright and things along those lines. If you want to see an example of how that can be done well, you want to read a Forgotten Realms series called The Cleric Quintet by, I'm trying to think who wrote it. Oh, I think it's Ari Salvatore.
Okay.
But it might be someone else. I don't know where my copy is right now, so I can't.
It would be behind you, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to dig behind you.
Anyway, it's 5 books. It basically shows the life of a cleric in D&D terms, and you see him rise up through the ranks as the books progress.
Patrick would like to know, as an author, what is your #1 difficulty?
Editing.
If you hadn't said that, I would have live edited you and said editing.
Editing, yeah.
Why?
Editing's the hardest part because you spend so much time crafting this and then you've got to change it. And sometimes that's more difficult than other times, right? Even after 36 books, it's still probably the toughest part of writing.
Yeah. Lewis would like to know, what's it like living the dream? He says, congratulations, you are my inspiration, which again is why you do a lot of these videos.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I like doing this, to hear from people. Let's be perfectly clear. I'm not living the life of Riley. It's not like I'm driving a limousine.
Oh God, that's aging yourself.
But we are, we're paying the bills.
We have a good life.
We have a good life.
Happy life.
We have a modest house. But it's nice because we get to work together. I work with my wife right beside me. We sit side by side as we edit. She has more monitors than I do.
But you don't like the music I play.
Yeah, sometimes the music is a bit distracting, so we have to put on instrumental music, because if it's a catchy tune and it's got words, then I have to start. I lose my concentration.
But soon I can play Christmas music.
Yeah, Christmas music is okay. I can kind of filter that out. So
I got questions here. Just TikTok, it puts the questions at the bottom. I have to scroll down each time.
Oh.
Lewis also would like to know, what would you say is the key for success, the path for some of us that are trying to auto-publish? I'm not sure what auto-publish is.
I think self-publish, probably.
Maybe self-publish, yes.
There is no one way to do anything, pretty much. I'll tell you what we did. We launched first on Kobo, because, if you look at the market, Amazon is the biggest part of the market, but Kobo is a very user-friendly and helpful interface. Yeah. And we published on Kobo first. I think we waited a couple of days, actually, before. It
was 10 days.
10 days, yeah.
It was scary. Pushing that publish button, oh my God. I think I went to the bathroom 5 times before I pushed it.
And then when it goes live, it's kind of a cool feeling. But then you're worried, like, did I forget something? Is there something in the book? It can be nerve-wracking. But you don't have to go everywhere all at once, all at the same time. That sounds like a movie. Everywhere all at once. Yeah. Just go get yourself started. You got to prepare your manuscript. It's the one thing you really should invest in is an editor to edit your book before you release. It's well worth it. But then don't expect just to suddenly start selling books, because other than maybe friends or relatives, you've got to get out there. There's a lot of reason people are on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and so on to get their names recognized by people.
Also, doing in-person events is good because you connect with your readers, which encourages you to write more. And it is instant gratification when someone says, "Oh, I know you. I saw you on TikTok," or "I've read
Yeah.
your book," or "Can I please have your signature?" So there's an impetus to continue writing.
Yes, we recently went to a book fair, and for the first time ever, I was recognized in public. Someone was saying, "Oh, I know you."
Well, no, they were another author, but that was still good.
Yes. Yeah,
But
so that was kind of neat. I haven't had that happen before.
yeah,
But it's nice just meeting other authors and
yeah,
seeing their experiences and
yeah.
hearing from them what their journey has been like.
Yeah, they want to know the key for success. There is no one key. What works for one author doesn't work for
Yeah,
another
yeah.
author. But I would say Paul does a lot of the writing. I do a lot of everything else. And I would say the number one thing you have to do is talk to other authors through Facebook is groups is fantastic and get their advice because you no sense trying something that they tried and it didn't work for them. Don't waste your money on certain advertising. And if you go into some of these groups, you quickly find where you shouldn't spend money and where you should.
Yes, and I think the key there is you have to find what works for you, and there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Oh, from Fold, you know who that
Yep.
is, wants to know, do knights name their swords or weapons in Merceria?
Not normally, but one of my characters, Beverly, has a magical hammer that was imbued with the power of nature. So it's called Nature's Fury. And it's actually consists of 3 specific earth magic spells. I won't
Uh,
go into details what those are.
okay.
She gets the weapon in book 4, I think it is.
One second. I have to go down to all the questions. There's a couple places.
No problem. I'll just grab a sip of water.
Happy Button Quail, what's your favorite trope to write or use in your campaign? Reluctant hero.
Reluctant hero. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm originally English, and there's a very
British.
British.
Yeah.
Well, England as opposed to Wales and Scotland,
There
but
you go.
there's a very old-fashioned concept that, when you go to war, you just go and you get the job done. You do what you have to do to win the war. It's not the gung-ho, I'm a hero kind of thing. It's more about treating it as a job, that's something that has to be done. So that fits well with the trope of the reluctant hero. They're not seeking glory. They're just trying to get the job done and make the world or the kingdom or whatever a safer place. So I think that comes through in my writing. I think that's probably my favorite trope.
Your least favorite is misunderstandings.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I know it fits some genres very well, and I'm not gonna
It's just not something you
it's just
enjoy.
not something I'm interested in writing. I would much rather have characters who can discuss their ideas and be adults.
I think it's because that's what you're like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then some of that will be because of my age. I'm not a teenager writing a book, and I'm not a young adult, so I tend to write a more
Mature.
mature manner, I guess. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with writing those other ways. That's just what appeals to me. So I write what I would like to read,
Yeah,
basically.
you've never been one for misunderstandings or overhearing people and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, the Necromonacan said that he took his name and mixed it with the other one. Just so you
Yep.
have no.
Necronomicon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Landorantum. God, you guys are killing me today. Landorantum says, what's your tips for young aspiring authors? Sorry if you got this question many times before, but I'm interested in your answer. Give you a hint, it's always the same.
Yes. If you want to get better at writing, you have to write. And I always like to say, pick a sport. It doesn't matter. It can be soccer, football, which can be the same thing if you're in Europe, hockey, baseball, whatever. You can't get better at a sport if you don't do the sport. Well, you can't get better at writing if you don't write. You might think you can't write, but the more you write, the more likely you are to improve your writing. You won't get better by doing nothing. So write. Even if you end up throwing it out, it's still experience. And for those role players out there, you know that experience leads to levels, right? You can level up your writing. See what I did there?
I tell people happy birthday by saying happy level up day.
Yep, I've done
You
that a
made it
few
to the
times.
next level.
That's right.
What do you think you would have wanted to hear? Like it took you a long time to finish your first book. What do you think would have been what you needed to hear 40 years ago when you thought of writing your first book that would have really helped you? What advice?
That's hard to say. First of all, 40 years ago, there were no real indie publishers, not like today. You couldn't publish electronically. That's just too new.
But what if you bumped into a famous author and they could have said something to you that would have really helped you? What do you think that advice would be that you could give to someone other than writing? Great advice.
I think, to my mind, the story has to start with characters that are interesting. If your and that doesn't mean your character has to be completely off their rocker. Like,
And they don't have to be good or bad. They just have to be interesting.
they have to be interesting. You have to engage the audience with characters that people are going to feel comfortable reading about or despising if it's an anti-hero, or maybe you're starting a story with a villain or something, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But there has to be some depth to the character. Um, I would say some of that's going to be genre specific.
Yeah.
But at least in fantasy, you have to decide how fantastical you're going to be. When it comes to writing fantasy, I like relatively low fantasy, but other authors prefer introducing, the fey creatures or extraplanar entities or gods or whatever. There's no right or wrong answer, but you have to kind of decide as an author which way you're going to go with that, and that helps you create your world and everything in it. One of the things that I do in my books, I have religions, and there are gods, and you can read those books looking at it like the gods don't really exist, but everyone just believes they do. Or you can read the book and believe that the gods do actually exist. You can read it both ways, so it's subject to interpretation. So I like having the reader be able to sort of make up their minds about things like that as well.
Here's an interesting one. I don't know whether you have an answer for it, but K. Rover wants to know what's a good way to expand your vocabulary. I have an answer, but
increase your vocabulary. I don't know.
Expand your vocabulary.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any one particular way to do that, and I would caution you against getting some people, when they try to write, think that they have to use big words and make it as highbrow as possible. The truth is, if you want to be a successful author, you want to appeal to a wide audience. So you're not, unless your target audience is a bunch of college professors that teach ancient history or something, you want to make it appealable to the average reader, right? At least from a business perspective. One of the things I had to face was in a lot of fantasy, the English is very clipped, like they don't use contractions. I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. My characters use contractions. Their speech in that sense is very modern. I try to avoid modern terms, but sometimes you kind of have to, because even though I could make up a swear word, and I've done a couple of them.
That really burns my bacon.
That burns my bacon. But by the same token, making up a word isn't going to help if people don't understand what the context of that word is. So you got to be careful. You don't want to alienate the readers. You want to be able to have them relate to the story. So that's a tricky balancing act in some cases.
Well, it's interesting. One of the more common comments on your books is that they're an easy read. It doesn't strain your brain in the sense that you're struggling to understand the language being used and the descriptions. They're very comfortable and you can read it at your leisure. You're not
Yeah,
stopping and wondering.
and that's really that's exactly what I wanted. You know, when I read a book, I don't want to have to struggle to read a book and understand it. I want to enjoy it. So the enjoyment should be from following the characters in the story, not struggling to understand what's being said, or you know, going on great gad's detail about something that doesn't really apply to the story at hand.
Han would like to know who's your favorite author. I could turn things, zoom in, but
My favorite author is Bernard Cornwell. He writes a number of different genres, but he's probably most well known for his shark books, which I mentioned earlier. He's done some, he's mostly historical fiction, but he has done some, I guess you call it pseudo-historical. He did some like Arthurian type stuff. And I really enjoy his writing style. There's lots of other authors I've enjoyed reading over the years as well, but I think if I had to pick one author, that would be him.
1 second. Somebody has a couple comments, but again, who's that? Happy Button Quail, I can say that name. What helps you finish a story when you have lots of ideas but struggle to start or end, which is exactly the problem you used to have?
Yep.
How do you push yourself to reach the point of publishing instead of getting stuck in the middle?
Well, funny you should mention that. I've started writing books many times before I finally got around to writing Servant of the Crown. And what worked for me was creating an outline. Before that, I would start a story, I'd get going great guns on it, and then I wouldn't know where to take the story. And I think for me, that's why plotting really helped, because I had the entire book plotted out from beginning to end. I knew where I had to get to at that final end point of the book, and that helped me get through it.
EP Werner says hi to us, except I'm not sure who that is.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Hello.
We probably know you, but I'm not recognizing the name, so our sincere
Yep, sometimes
apologies.
the handles are different from the names we know.
I think it's an author we know. Oh, who's your favorite indie author who lives in London, Ontario? That's from The Fold. Fold.
Gee, I don't know. Would that be Eric?
Yeah. And he wants to know who your favorite indie author is. Who lives in Ontario, London. It's a joke.
Yeah.
You're supposed to say him.
Yeah, it's Eric.
You've been asked 4 times to translate them to Spanish, and I'm going to apologize. That's something we'd love to do, but a very expensive endeavor. It's $5,000 per book per language.
Yes.
And if we had that amount of money, we'd probably own a bigger house. And you still wouldn't have the Spanish version.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's going to take a while. So.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, for that kind of money, that would be audiobooks too. So
yeah, we still have to do
that's a very hard choice to make. How are we doing time-wise? Oh,
we have a few more minutes if anybody else has any questions. Hazel is still down here watching. She's been here the whole time.
She's supervising.
She's supervising. Usually she goes upstairs. Our other dog, Tilly, is upstairs. She will not come downstairs unless we have a tornado warning and we carry her down. So you don't get to see her.
But she's happy up there. She's mellow.
Yes. Kay Rover would like to know any tips for world building.
World building. So I think in terms of a world, there's a tendency for people to go overboard. You want to have the basics down. You don't need to develop every single country unless it's in part of the plot of your story. That's one of the things I like about running a role-playing game is you start off with a small area. Usually the first adventure is just, you know, a village. The environs of a village. There's a tavern. There's a, I don't know, a hunter, a blacksmith. That helps you sort of get the ball rolling in terms of developing. And then from there, you can expand out. So it's important to know where to set your limits. Do I need to draw the entire world? If you look at my books, Eidenworth obviously is on a planet, but really it's about the size of Europe. You don't see the rest of the world because it has no bearing on the plots of any of the storylines. The drama, if you will, is either in Merceria for Heir to the Crown, the Petty Kingdoms, or farther east for the Frozen Flame.
Okay, I've got a bunch of questions. These are fast round questions.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to release more of the books on audiobook format?
Yes.
Just have
But
to.
we don't have any dates for you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If someone wants to start your books, what's the first that you would recommend? That's Shades. Sorry.
Okay. Depends on what you want. If you want to ease into the world of Eidenworth, I would say Servant of the Crown. If you want to jump in with lots of magic, Ash.
Okay. So same person about the audiobooks. They loved listening to the first 3 books.
In the Heir to the Crown series?
Yes.
There should be the
fourth, but
book.
it's only available through Audible.
Oh, okay.
Because of the way we did it.
Yes.
So we apologize about that.
The Frozen Flame is available in its entirety on various platforms, though.
Yes.
They've gone wide.
What techniques, this is Lemon Man, what techniques do you use to get into a creative, imaginative state and come up with ideas?
I don't know. I'm just always thinking about stuff. Not that I have much spare time, but
Not now.
occasionally when I have spare time, I'll just watch an old movie. And this could be anything. It could be an old Zorro movie or some like a war movie from way back in the 50s or something, or some old science fiction show. And sometimes I'll just see something that will spark my imagination. It may have nothing to do with fantasy, just sort of a plot point or a twist on a character. So I get my inspiration from pretty much anywhere.
Okay. Lando Rantum wants to know, what do you think of maps in fantasy books? I brought some down with me.
I like having maps in fantasy books. I wish there was a way to make it easier for e-readers, though, because when you're in the middle of reading and you want to check the map, it's kind of hard to like flip back in your ebook and then come back to the page you're on.
Yeah.
But personally, I love having maps. Now we use a program called Incarnate. In the very early books, we didn't have Incarnate, so the maps aren't looking quite as nice. And we've kind of settled on a style in the newer books that fits well for both ebook and the published books as well.
Lemon Man would like to know, when do you write on a daily basis and how do you get into writing mindset?
So this is a full-time job for me. I write Monday to Friday. I generally start writing after my morning routines around 10 o'clock or so. I tend to do what's called sprint writing. So I'll write for 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and then I'll get up and make tea. And then because I'm churning over ideas, and then I'll sit back down. And typically my most productive time is between 10 and 12. I'll usually get about 2,000 words. And then after lunch, we take a break for lunch, walk the dogs and so on. I usually get about 1,000, maybe 1,500 on a good day in the afternoon.
I think when you first started writing, I think you wrote more, but you are struggling a little bit right now with the book you're trying to write.
Well, I'm finishing off a 15-book series, so there's a lot of checking and double checking facts and figures and looking up things.
How do you deal with that? Because this has actually happened with the final book in each series. You've had a struggle with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you want to finish off a series in sort of a big way, but you don't want to lose what makes that series unique to begin with. Once again, it comes back to characters. I'm working on Victory of the Crown, and I completely redid my background, the outline, because I realized I was concentrating too much on this war that had come about and not enough on the characters that were involved. So I made it more character driven.
E.P. Werner wants to know, what do you think about a book where the character names are all invented, like Marvillo Craffle?
I
Well, they're
don't
spelled
mind,
differently, so.
yeah, I don't mind invented names, but it should be something that people don't struggle to
Yeah.
pronounce. I've seen stories like, and I'm talking from professional publishers even, where you look at a name and you're just not quite sure how to pronounce it. If you can, nothing wrong with doing that if you're going to give a pronunciation guide, maybe.
Yes, yes.
But otherwise, you're looking at it thinking, what is this name?
Actually, I say we because I sometimes help Paul pick names. We do that frequently. We take a name that you could read it and pronounce it, but it's got a different slight spelling. Like Charlene is not it's a made up name.
Yes.
But it just rolls off the tongue.
Right.
So as long as a person can say the name, because you're reading a book right now that was highly rated, and you got about 3 chapters in, you said, I can't, the names are just killing me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say what the name of the book was because it's a good book.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to be in the right mindset to tackle those names.
Yeah.
Or just, not do them quite the way justice that they need. Okay.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, someone else says they really like to see maps. From Fold was one of any tips for keeping continuity moving forward in a series? You say your answer, then I'll say mine.
I mean, I still make mistakes in continuity.
Yeah.
Tips for continuity. When I finish a book that's going to have another book follow it, sequel, whatever, later in the series, I immediately take what I need to carry over to the next book, and I put that at the very beginning of my outline. So right before I even have like chapter 1, I'll put in all these things that I need to remember to include in the next book. So that's the main way of doing it. But I also will often refer to the previous books in the series. So, for example, in the book I was just outlining, I needed to pick someone for a scene, one of the guards, and I went, oh, hang on a second, I've mentioned a guard before, Evard Brenton.
Oh.
So I looked him up, and because I had to make sure I hadn't like accidentally killed him off or something.
Accidentally killed him off. All right. So they accepted, and the best way to do it, which Paul didn't do, is to create a world Bible, and that you put things in it. So he has cobbled one together. So he has a list of all the important dates. He has a list of the major characters' ages, which is good because we had one book and it was on the final read through that we discovered the ages was like 5 years off.
Yes. I also have
a list
separate documents. I have one for dwarves, goblins, elves, temple knights, and it basically, like for example, the orcs, it will list every named orc. It will say whether they're male or female, because quite frankly, with an orc name, it's hard to tell. It'll say what tribe they're in, terms that are useful for orcs. All the tribes of the orcs are listed in that document. And anything else, like I use the term umak to describe their boats that they make. So that's all in that document. I call it named orcs.
Yeah.
I have named dwarves, named goblins, and so on. So I always update that when I create a new character that fits into that.
And then from an editing perspective, for those who have an editor, I created a style sheet for Paul. So it has all the words he's ever made up, what words he likes to capitalize that don't normally get capitalized, like anything with royal, we capitalize, or holy. And so we share that with the editor. It's about 10 pages long.
Yep.
Because it's a mix of Canadian, US, and UK spelling. So once you decide in book 1, you have to follow through with that. So
yeah, Canadian writing in Canadian is interesting because sometimes you're using an English spelling for a word and sometimes you're using an American one. But it doesn't matter which you choose in terms of being a Canadian, as long as you're consistent. And so it's that consistency we're trying to achieve.
So a few more quick questions. Lemon Man, did you start with short stories or go right to novels?
I jumped right into novels, and I started right in on a book that's a 15-book series.
We didn't know that when you wrote the first one.
No. Well, I knew it was going to be a number of books. It was based on the role-playing game. So, it was going to be a few. I think it wasn't until I finished the second book that I started planning out a big, huge series.
Oh, Drew with Plush wants to know, what is your favorite book that you wrote? And you can't
All of
say the one
them.
you're writing now because it's well, actually, it might be. He started writing and then he spent 2 weeks rewriting the whole outline. So he's starting again today.
Yeah, I am pretty excited about some of it, sometimes when you're writing, it's a little bit of a chore because you have to cover off certain things and you kind of want to get to the good
Yeah,
parts. And I've actually, in a couple of books, I've sort of skipped a couple chapters ahead and written that part because it was more fun to write, and then go back and sort of fill in.
yeah,
And I'll probably end up doing that in Victory because there are multiple storylines. It's actually easier to write one continuous
yeah.
storyline. I use a program called Scrivener, so you can keep all the chapters in separate folders. So I'll probably end up doing that, I think.
Someone said David says he has a friend named Charlene, but it's nothing like your Temple Knight. I don't know what that means. How did you settle? Lemon Man wants to know, how did you settle on writing fantasy?
uh, well, I think, had been living in England, I might have gone for historical fiction because there are so many historical sites. Living in Canada, our history isn't quite as ancient as what you would find there. Um, and fantasy, as I mentioned earlier, is nice because you can go anywhere you want with it. You have full creative control over events. You can invent your own history. In my case, I don't know if I didn't sit down and just invent the world. It sort of grew over time with elements from different campaigns that I run over the years. So I think that's where that kind of fits into the scene.
Um, sorry. Happy Button Quail wants to know, where do you write your stories to draft? Like by hand in a notebook, or do you use an app like Microsoft Word?
No, I use a program called Scrivener on my PC, and that's where I write.
But before you go into Scrivener, you use Word.
Oh, I use a
Yeah.
Word to do my outline. Yeah, it's the Word. But years ago I would use Word Perfect, which I would still prefer to use. I don't have an updated version of it.
Because no one makes it anymore. It's
Well, they still make it,
ancient.
but Word is part of the suite. So
It's sweet. I like
yeah.
Word. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add before we sign off?
I can't think of anything else. Thank you for joining us. Do we know what we're talking about next week? Do we have next week's? If you go to our website, pauljbennetauthor.com, you can subscribe to our newsletter,
And then I'll tell you there.
we will post in our newsletter what the next topic of conversation will be. Other than that, we'll see you back here at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on the next Tuesday.
Okay, we're still live because we have to end the stream. Goodbye.
Bye.